platform, an insurance against market challenges, that's the question. And I immediately gave the screen to my colleague Ilaria Conti for introducing the debate and then the first speakers. Ilaria, the screen is yours.
Many thanks, Alberto, and welcome everybody. I invite already our speakers and panelists for today's debate to activate their cameras. Many thanks to all of you for connecting for this debate, which is going to, as Alberto just mentioned, to explore and to provide an update on the idea of joint purchasing and on the concrete implementation of an energy platform for Europe for joint purchasing. This idea of a joint purchasing mechanism for energy in Europe has occurred several times in the debate in the past as a possible alternative or support to the regular functioning of the market and the submission of the offers and bids via the regular market mechanisms managed by companies. But at the beginning of the recent energy crisis, it was already included in the first set of measures by the Commission in the so-called toolbox published in October 2021 as a possible long-term measure. So the idea of a voluntary joint procurement of reserve gas stocks. Then, as we know, the concept has evolved, and through the REPowerEU in particular, the Commission and the member states set up a real energy platform for the voluntary common purchase of gas, LNG, and in the future, hydrogen, with the main purpose of course, providing a response, an effective response to the energy crisis and also to the war, which had in the meantime outbroke between Russia and Ukraine, and in response also to decreasing volumes of gas imported from Russia. So security of supply and diversification certainly as main purposes. And now we are more than 1 year later. And we wanted to organize this debate to understand what has been achieved through the platform, what is the way forward, what are the next steps, particularly because the platform, as I mentioned, is also intended to activate more functions and probably to serve the purpose of purchasing different commodities such as hydrogen. And in the meantime, of course, it has indeed helped the signing of a number of Memoranda of Understanding with external suppliers that could help indeed strengthening security of supply for Europe. So we are going to discuss all of this, and I'm really happy that we have an excellent program, excellent speakers that have kindly accepted to join. We will start as usual with 2 introductory presentations, and then we will have a panel debate, which will be moderated by Alberto, and some polls. We have prepared also some polls for the audience that then will be commented upon by our speakers today. So we will start with our first speaker. The introductory presentation will be given. I'm very happy to have with us Cristina Lobillo Borrero, Director of the Energy Platform Task Force in the European Commission, DG Energy. Cristina, many thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Ilaria, and thank you, Alberto, and thank you to the Florence School of Regulation for inviting me, for inviting DG Energy to this very timely event. I'm very happy to be with you today. So allow me to give you some introductory remarks and to place the work of the platform and also to explain to you where we are in the work of the platform. As you all know, the last year, and I mean, I would say not only the war the last year, but the ongoing war in Ukraine triggered several, let's say, knock-on effects globally. And in particular, an unprecedented energy crisis in the European Union. So as reaction, the European Union, the Commission with member states, we adopted different measures of different kind, from the compulsory filling of the gas storage in the European Union, the market correction mechanism, and the voluntary gas demand reduction. And in this context, the European Union also mandated the Commission to work with member states in order to design a joint purchasing platform for energy. Also to coordinate the international outreach to global suppliers and to enhance the use of the infrastructure. So this was the mandate that the European Council gave to the Commission. As Commission, we tried to respond very quickly and in a decisive way with our umbrella of REPower Plan, that I'm sure REPowerEU Plan, that I'm sure that you will know. Since May 22, we have been, first of all, diversifying and replacing energy supplies away from Russia and towards more reliable suppliers. We have also, which is very, very important for the European Union, we have tried to speed up the clean energy transition, and this is another important leg of the REPower. We have proposed now higher targets for renewables, for energy efficiency to meet our climate goals. And we are also making faster and less complex to acquire permits for investing in renewable projects in the European Union. And in particular, giving a huge push to invest more in solar energy in the European Union. In 2022, the total gas supply in the European Union is estimated around, was estimated around 380 BCM, and will be not at this level, will be around 330 BCM in this year. And the LNG has been obviously the main source of gas, replacing missing Russian volumes in the European Union, with a sharp increase from 81 billion cubic meters in 2021 to around 135 billion cubic meters the last year in 22. So more than a 60% of increase year to year. Obviously, our partners, international partners who help us more on that were Norway, the US, but also we increased some gas supplies from Algeria, from Azerbaijan, in order to replace, as I was mentioning before, the Russian gas in our territory. When it comes to just to give you, this is the main framework, but just to give you a very specific information about the EU energy platform. It was launched, as I was mentioning before, with the objective to replace Russian gas. And we identified 3 areas of focus. First, demand aggregation and joint purchase of gas, but also to help to improve the efficiency of the existing infrastructure in the European Union. We also created some task force working with our international partners and some Memoranda of Understanding, just to make sure that we have a kind of agreement, even in non-binding, to secure this gas to the European Union. And we started in the December 22, the Solidarity Regulation that gave us, it was adopted by the Council, and this Solidarity Regulation gave us the legal basis to proceed with demand aggregation and joint purchase of gas. It's very important to stress that the tools we propose might be interesting on one hand for suppliers seeking bigger demand and bigger market, and on the other hand for the companies aggregating demand to get also a direct access to a wide spectrum of suppliers to obtain competitive prices. We are obviously talking to small volumes because obviously it's 15% of the aggregated demand, but it's a nice first step to see or to test if this mechanism works or not in the European Union. Obviously, the platform is cost-free and risk-free, so we are not imposing any budgetary, let's say, commitment on that. There are no fees for using the Aggregate EU within the platform, and there are no legal commitment triggered by using the Aggregate EU. So it's a voluntary mechanism that companies could use. In very close cooperation with member states, we designed a 2-step approach. First, the demand aggregation, The platform allows companies located in member state and the energy community contracting parties, this is the Western Balkans plus Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, to express the gas demand. Moreover, member states should also make sure that their companies submit to demand aggregation a volume equivalent to 15% of the gas that they need to refill the gas storage in the European Union for winter 2023-2024. That is around 30.5 billion of cubic meters. The Commission works also with an external service provider, Prisma. You will have the occasion to have one colleague from Prisma after my intervention, who set up an IT tool to register companies, record their demand, volumes, delivery time and place, aggregated and match it with global supplies. Companies can also express the demand for pipeline gas on 26 national balancing points and within 2 virtual LNG zones for deliveries per month in the different tenders that we launch. Rounds of tenders will happen every 2 months until the end of 2023, allowing companies each time to contract gas for the next 12 months, so 1 year of possible contract. After that, potential sellers input the offers, and the most competitive ones are matched with the demand in an optimal manner. So the cheapest offer are the ones that are retained in the after the matching. We also propose 2 different models to cooperate in the platform from the companies. We call company cooperation frameworks to model, and we set principle to define them. The 2 models are the central buyer and the agent on behalf, which through the set of principles that we identify, ensure that they are in compliance with competition rules, and they benefit jointly about negotiating and purchasing gas, and also that these benefits are passed to the end consumers. Currently, we have in our platform 14 companies who act as agents on behalf at 9 as central buyers. The second element is the voluntary purchase of gas. Because again, this is voluntary, as nobody is obliged to participate in the platform. Once demand has been matched with supply, companies are free to negotiate and conclude the contract with the gas suppliers to the platform. The contracting phase is always carried out outside Aggregate EU and without any involvement of the Commission or Prisma. So this is work. The negotiating contract is only business to business. So we are not involved as Commission, neither Prisma is involved on that. But obviously we want to have the information on the volumes that finally are contracted, and the companies will get they have some request or some information, reporting information that we'll use just to monitor the situation. But obviously this information will never include commercial information that is related to companies and who sign the contract only. So we launched the first tender in May, and the results are very, I would say, I'm optimistic. We are happy with the results. There are so far over 120 companies, both buyers and or sellers, who have subscribed to Aggregate EU. And registration is still open, so companies could continue registering in the Aggregated EU. In the first round, we have also seen a demand of 11.6 billion cubic meters, and supply offers around 18.7, leading to a 10.9 billion cubic meter of demand being actually matched. So this is the number of the first tender. LNG, because I was mentioning before that we have gas pipeline and LNG as well. So LNG represented more than 20% of volumes successfully matched, and 18 out of the 21 delivery points where demand was expressed had also supply bit, which is very important just to complete the whole cycle. Negotiation between companies are now underway, and we are now in the process to prepare the second tender that will take place in the second half of June. So as Commission, as DG Energy, we are in very close contact with all the stakeholders, and in particular companies try to seek a feedback on possible improvements and possible long-term uses when appropriate. Obviously, and just my last remarks, I would like also to mention that this platform needs to be considered in the whole constellation of measures that we adopted in the European Union to tackle the energy crisis. We believe that it's an instrument that that has contributed, that could contribute in the future. We are now in the process to think on to what will we do in the future with the platform. I say James is here with us, and we are also discussing very much with Eurogas, because the legal basis that we have at this stage is Article 122, that is emergency legislation, and our legislation, our legal basis expires in December this year. So we are thinking on what to do in the future. So we are in this process now, and obviously we continue in very close contact with companies, with member states. This Friday, Vice President Šefčovič will meet the steering board. This is a representative from all member states to monitor all the operation that we do in this joint purchase of gas. And we are also working in parallel with our international partners just to make clear that, or to make or secure that additional gas supplies come in the European Union. So I stop here, and I wish you a very successful discussions, and looking forward to listening to you as well. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, Christina, for this very clear explanation and assessment of where we are with the platform. It's really, really much appreciated. I know that you unfortunately cannot stay with us until the end of the debate, but I mean, thank you very much for this introduction, and perhaps some of your colleagues will still be connected and very welcome to reply or intervene via the chat or so on. So again, many thanks. We are now going to discuss let's say the more technical challenges, or the challenges in setting up this platform from the perspective of Prisma, that, as we have just heard also from Christina, it's the provider for the IT tool which is really at the core of the energy platform, this REPowerEU. And Prisma has also a long experience as a capacity platform. So I look forward to hearing from Falk Porzik, Head of Legal and Regulation at Prisma, which were or still are or will be the challenges related to the European Energy Platform. Falk, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I'm pleased to guide you through a short overview on actually challenges that happen to us when we have been appointed as the platform and the service provider for the demand aggregation and joint procurement. Do you put the presentation on, please?
I think we are working on it. It's coming.
Yes, in general, I would like to guide you through just the challenges that we actually were facing when we wanted to build a very complex service, but quite fast, actually. And on the other hand, I also want to introduce you into the business processes that actually followed upon our analysis and discussions we had so far.
I'm seeing if Daniela is... Yes, okay. 1 minute.
Yes, no problem. So as you actually can imagine, maybe, so we are facing actually quite a couple of challenges. So on the one hand, we had clear and hard requirements coming from the emergency regulation, of course, but those were, however, facing more on the task and the what to implement and some formal regulations and requirements. On the other hand, there was still quite some room on the how to implement it. So how to collect demand, how to collect the bids, how to rate them actually, and how and which products we would need to implement. And all those challenges were facing actually also a very mixed and heterogeneous stakeholder group. Meaning there was not only our customer and partner, which is then DG Enner, but on the other hand, of course, the wholesalers, retailers, producers, LNG carriers, and of course, the end consumers, industrial consumers, where we always had to feed different requirements actually as well. And on top of that, there was a very, very tight timeline of actually 6 to 8 weeks, if you consider it in total, where you can actually imagine this is for a service provider or in software development is a very, 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 very tight time frame. So actually, how did we tackle that? So first of all, we decided to build a North Star. So if you would please go to this slide exactly. So in the very first workshop we had together with DG Enner, we are trying to not to lose focus. We built a guiding principle and we call it our North Star, where we said, finally, we want to contribute to the security of supply by building a solution that is bridging extraordinary emergency situations for winter 2023-24. It is with a focus on LNG. So it was clearly for us that all of our actions we would take during the development must be measured against our North Star and must contribute to it, so that we are not losing focus finally. So it was also clear for all of us that there's not a question about new market design or the creation of a new marketplace. No, rather it should be a place where buyers and sellers can meet, and which is enabling for new contractual relations and possibilities, so that we are actually able to bridge the emergency scenario and also help filling the storages according to the storage filling obligation. So all in all, this was really a blueprint for a perfect agile development scenario. So please proceed to the next slide. So it was very clear for us that we had to focus on early delivery. So on the other hand, we might not lose our quality level. So everything which we are implementing was clearly discussed, it was clearly tested, and then we actually can implement it. And also one thing which is very special in this very, very tight time frame was that we were always seeking out for feedback on the processes. And feedback not only meant here feedback from DG Enner, where we actually still have and had more or less daily telcos or workshops together. No, it was also feedback collected by the, we called it pilot user group, where we had some volunteers that wanted to contribute to the development process and also say we're coming from all the different groups of the potential customers of the platform. So we had industrial consumers, we had suppliers, we had traders, and they were all sitting on the table, and each single process we finally developed was tested and measured against and with them. And we collected the feedbacks that we actually also were possible to already improve during the development process, and that we tested everything what we thought might be a good idea also with the market actually. So, and finally, and then we came up with the 4 slices which we actually developed. So the first one was in the registration and subscription part, demand aggregation, and transparency reporting, and tender process matching. So you could click through that we can actually see all the slices. I do not want to really deep dive here. Next to those clearly separated tasks we actually had to fulfill, it was also clear for us that within this process, we had to build a very lean and clear user experience. So meaning the screens had to be made simple, easy to understand, and that everybody actually was quite intuitively able to fill out all the required documents or questions and fields that we are requiring. And on top of that, also one task was also to develop some terms and conditions. And also here we focused on not overbuilding and over-exaggerating all the tasks we had here. So we also strive to actually make some clear and lean and easy to understand terms and conditions, which are specifically drafted for the REPowerEU service that we can offer on the platform. So those were the actual challenges and so how we implemented it in an agile way. So it's also we are working in 2-week sprints with our development teams, meaning every 2 weeks we can build some iterations. And it was also clear for us, according to the process and the tough timeline, that not everything will be ready at the very beginning, but that we can actually develop all the different slices in an iterative process, meaning we could start with the registration and subscription first, where we could also use lots of existing processes and services that were already available on the capacity platform. We just needed to extend it for the subscription and the specific requirements for the REPowerEU service. And then we could start with the demand aggregation and build it. After this was delivered, we could start with the tender process and the matching. And then finally, we could also develop at the very last point, transparency and reporting functionalities. And so all in all, we are really able to build the full process and the full tool within more or less 6 weeks only. But what actually were the business processes that we have built and that we have agreed upon so far? Then this is then on the next slides, please, where I think a couple of participants that might be joining in the industrial advisory group or in the regional working groups might have seen those slides already. But nevertheless, I would like to guide you through what we have developed so far and also already give you a short outlook on what might be some improvements for the next tendering round. So one very new thing actually we developed together with DGN was the virtual LNG hubs. Here we were facing the situation that no contractual standard framework is actually available. There's so the LNG market is very less or little standardized only. So we decided, okay, we leave it up to the parties to agree finally on the hubs or the delivery points for the LNG where they might deliver. But we separated the virtual EU LNG hub in Northwest Europe and Southeast Europe because according to our analysis we did so far, those are reflecting also 2 price zones where we thought the chance that actually buyers and suppliers will meet might be the highest. Of course, the period that we decided also for the products is always monthly products. So it's so you can have up to 12 months. This was in the last bidding round, so you could bid up for 12 months in advance. For M+2 up +12. For each single month, you could place your demand, and also you could place your bid to sell. For the virtual energy hubs. What is quite new now, so because this is also responding to feedback we received after the first round, especially from industrial consumers or final consumers, that the demand period will be extended until March 2025. So meaning when the next bidding round or demand aggregation round is starting by end of June, you will have the possibility to put your demand in there until March 2025, still in monthly slices. Next to it, this was the other product. No, please go back to the slide. So it was the national balancing points. So not meaning the UK national balancing points, but rather the virtual trading points in each single market was the other product. So because we looked really to find some very standardized solutions, and here also we focused on the national balancing points where you also could place your demand for the upcoming 12 months. Also, this will be changed for until March 2025. One addition we had here for the pipeline gas and the transport within the markets. Actually, there's already one contractual standard available, which is the FA General Agreements. And here we recommended that the buyers and sellers might conclude those general agreements together if it runs through the process. But as Christina also said before, so the process itself is voluntary, so you are not obliged to any of those things. So you could also develop your own contractual agreements And also you could deviate from the prices that maybe you put afterwards, but they were indicatively. Please move on to the next slide. So as I said, we strived for really implementing very, very easy to grab solutions. Where we said, okay, how to create bids. You see, those are the term sheets out of which the following tenders are actually built. Quite easy to put. So the gas quantities, it is now actually changed to megawatt hours, not in gigawatt hours anymore. You put the price for the national balancing points. We also decided that it's always different to the TTF price, because here our analysis also showed that if you're going for longer running products, which are actually already 1 or 2 months in the future, the national or balancing point prices or the national indices actually didn't apply or are not really used by the market. And you could also put your validity periods. Just to go quickly through, then also the principles of the matching algorithm we developed then so far, which is on the next slide. You see, this was really just a quite easy solution that we finally proved. So since we had either the TTF prices and a difference, or a total price for the LNG, it was quite easy that we rate everything from the lowest to the highest price. And if there was over demand or over supply, then always a pro rata mechanism would actually apply to the results. On the next slide, you see also some examples how this actually will work, but this is just for explanation. Need a bit to speed up that we are not exceeding our time frame actually. So, but this is just explaining the pro rata allocation. So you can still continue, please. Until the information on the matching results to the buyers, where you see also source information is quite easily compiled and understandable for all of the parties. So if you please move 1 slide further, then we see that if you're participating in the virtual LNG, you will see as a buyer also your potential consortia partners. So meaning here the buyers are disclosed to each other, that here we enable that also buyers could put their demand finally together to actually also achieve the limits for one cargo from the possible sellers. You also see the possible sellers, the shares, price, and for the virtual trading points or national balancing points, you do not see the other buyers, you just see the potential sellers that put some bids to sell on your demand. On the next slide, you see the information which is shown then to the sellers. Here it's also quite straightforward. You just see, okay, the potential buyers that have been allocated. Also, you see the financial collaterals that they were required to put in at the very beginning in the registration process. So it's very lean and very clear information also to comply with the respective competition requirements, and that you're not sharing too much data, but essential data actually. And then finally, we had the contracting and transparency tool developed, which is once, and Christina mentioned it, the contractual negotiations happen outside of the platform, but once a contract is concluded, or even if it's not concluded, you can submit those results via the contracting and transparency tool on the platform. So actually the buyers are obliged to report the concluded contracts, but next to it, we also have certain information that might be useful if you're in negotiation, if the contract was withdrawn or did not happen. You can also put some information there, which might be then useful for DGN to assess actually. Yes, and that's it. And then we have the last slide, which is then the timeline of a usual tendering round, which is, if you move 1 slide further, please, then we can see it that it's usually it should be done within 2 weeks, meaning within 14 working days, but this can deviate also depending on the national holidays or if there's EU vacation days or whatever. So next round will be starting by, I think this is the 26th of June and last for 2 weeks, and then the matching results are done. Yes, and that's it. Thank you very much for your attention and happy to further discussions.
Many thanks, Falk. Many thanks to you. Yes, indeed, we are a few minutes beyond schedule, but this was actually very welcome. I think your explanation of how the platform works is actually something of really of interest to our audience. So thank you very much for being so clear. I would give now the floor to Alberto, who will manage the second part of this debate and introduce our panelists.
Yes, thank you, Ilaria. Thank you also both to Christine and Falk for their presentation. There is already one question in the chat, but I will leave it to later on, because now we move to the to a panel discussion, and we are very honored to have 4 distinguished speakers covering different constituencies in the energy sector. We have James Watson, Secretary General of Eurogas, Doug Wood, the Gas Committee Chair at EFED, the European Federation of Energy Traders, Peter Kleis, President of EFIEC, representing large energy consumers, and Carola Milligram, Head of Gas at E-Control, representing the, taking the perspective of the regulator. So I would actually, this is an order which is different of the one that is in the program, but I thought that this would make more sense in discussing the platform. So I would ask James to go first. James from Eurogas, James Watson, for your initial consideration, initial statement. Please stay within 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Alberto, and indeed, thanks very much for the kind invitation. I'm very happy to discuss about this topic because it is a topic which has indeed been dominating a lot of the work that we have been doing in Eurogas in many ways over the last 12 months. Of course, the terrible war in Ukraine is the source of the reasons why we are gathered here today, and we can't forget that. Indeed, we would say the Russian behavior, the way that they also approached their supply of gas towards Europe, and not necessarily honoring contracts that were put forward, really did lead to a significant degree of price pressure. And of course, when you get to price pressure, price affects consumers, consumers are voters, and the issue that we face is no longer economic, it's also political. And of course, political elites have to act. They worry about being re-elected, they worry about the citizens that they represent. And so they have to think about things that they could do. And let's be honest, from a Eurogas point of view, we are certainly not in favor in normal circumstances of any of the ideas really that have been put forward. This area though, this platform came up through the idea of joint purchasing. And Eurogas was willing to accept that there may be a possibility to explore joint purchasing under the basis of the emergency, on the basis that indeed we could see that there might be some use to perhaps getting some kind of how should we say, a waiver from DG Competition to be able to work together. In essence, what actually really happened was that, in fact, DG Competition was not really willing to give any waiver. Naturally, I think it's very difficult for them to imagine giving carte blanche to the gas sector, even in the crisis. And so, in the wisdom, the European Commission decided to look at a different approach to joint purchasing, which was the idea of creating the energy platform, and indeed these 2 models that were mentioned by Christina, this agent on behalf and the central buyer. Again, in Eurogas, we're not against either of those models. We think that they already kind of are quite close to things that exist in the market in any case. And so from a Eurogas perspective, the actual creation of our EU was not something that we were against particularly, because in essence, it mimicked what we see in the market. We might question the amount of administration that goes alongside it, and the burden that that can put on our members. But in principle, there was no reason for us to clearly go out against it. I think, again, and this is still something we still have to see how DG Competition reacts to the way that the platform operates, and whether or not these models of central purchaser or agent on behalf are actually successful, and whether any contracts are actually signed. This is still to be seen. I think that one of the things that was most noticeable for me, though, during the whole process was that the European Commission also came around to thinking about what they were doing, because at the beginning of this, the rhetoric was, we're going to club together, we're going to use our purchasing power, we're going to buy gas more cheaply. I think then they realized that, in fact, this isn't going to be the case, because there is a limited amount of supply. And the only way you can get cheaper gas is by having more supply, negotiating better deals, perhaps long-term contracts. And so in that regard, they then changed the way that they thought about it. And so in this way, I'm also quite interested, although IFIEC is representing big players. And they were saying the rhetoric became more, we will help smaller countries, we will help smaller buyers by facilitating the market, by giving them more access to more suppliers, maybe more direct access to suppliers. From a Eurogas perspective, we would also probably question that in a way that the market already provided for people. And that I think that we have seen there hasn't been a massive pickup of gas in the platform by small industrial sectors. Many have other mechanisms that they operate within the market itself. Nevertheless, as I say, we look at it as a form of, there are many different types of activities that could have been undertaken by the European Commission. Of all of the difficult situations that we're in, and we can never forget the political elements around this, we accept that this was in a direction that should have been explored, and therefore we have not particularly opposed it. Indeed, Christina referred to the fact that we've worked very closely, and I think we've worked very closely to try and make sure that it is as least disruptive as possible to the market, because we still need the market. And that's the bottom line from the point that we would make. The point about emergency measures is this. We accept emergency measures, perhaps reluctantly sometimes, Alberto, but we accept them because there is an emergency. I think we have to look very carefully in the next 6 months to see where we are. Today, I was looking, I think TTF is around about 20-something euros. I'm not going to give an exact figure because it fluctuates, but it's around 20-something euros. This is, this is pre, even if you want to call it Russian manipulation, whatever you want to call the pre-price increases that we experienced at the end of 2021. I think, therefore, it's very difficult to justify a continuation. And this is the message that we've been giving Christina and others quite a lot recently. You can't just simply extend emergency measures if there is no emergency. You can't suddenly change the way that we operate just on a whim like that. We have a gas package going through the legislation, which is determining how the gas market should run, and that should be the basis of it. And so I would just say that, in principle, we accept things when there is an emergency. I also will accept, and people will challenge me on this, they will say, yeah, okay, but the gas sector is still a knife edge. You need one incident, a fire at Freeport, or another pipe to go out, or unusually warm weather, hydro fails, nuclear fails, whatever. There are many different variables that could impact. And I think in that regard, Alberto, we do accept that. And that's why I'm not saying that, just scrap everything now. You have to look at what happens in the next 6 months. But I will finish by saying emergency measures are for emergencies. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, James. I think a very clear perspective from the gas industry. And now we move to Doug Wood. Well, now we hear the perspective of the traders, the shippers on the market. Doug.
Thanks, Alberto, and thanks to the Florence School for continuing to organise these debates, which I think are a very useful way to open up some of the key points to wider discussion to understand what's going on. And I'm very happy to participate in this. And going back again, we have gone through some extraordinary changes to the market, lurching from the pandemic, when there was a substantial oversupply of energy, to the unjustified aggression in Ukraine and the use of Russian gas exports as a means of exerting political control. And it's actually been incredible the way the market has responded to these things, going from this oversupply to providing the necessary price signals to consumers to conserve demand for new LNG projects and export projects from North America, to accelerating other production. And I think when we look at that, it's these things in physical markets take time to happen. It's not only about the price signal, but there has to be investment. There has to be new rigs brought on in North America to create new production. There has to be new liquefaction facilities, new shipping, new import potential. And we also have observed different transportation congestions in Europe. And all of these things take time to resolve. And the flexibility of the price volatility we've seen in the market is part of a measure of that. That's quite normal for a market to move from one extreme state to another extreme state. There will be a transition period under which prices may be volatile, and the more extreme the differences in those two states, the more volatility and the more extreme price signals may require in order to make that transition happen. And I think we can see these things are extremely difficult. for consumers and for politicians to understand and to manage. And that's partly what led to a series of emergency measures in order to try to ensure these things were happening efficiently. The market was delivering this effectively, and there wasn't something else going wrong, which was a result of market design or participation or structure. And I think we have to see the emergency measures in that light of an attempt to make sure things are happening as they should. And certainly it's been our contention that the market has worked extremely well during this time, being able to deliver these things. And we can understand that the aggregate EU platform was one idea to come up with to ensure that the market was working properly, to give people an alternative if there were areas where there could have been greater efficiencies or participation in buying or selling was not already available to people who could be brought into the sector but were not currently doing so. Now, I also recognise, as James also mentioned, that there's two kind of aspects of this. There's a political angle, and I think we have to recognise the political momentum behind some of these solutions. And it's not really my intention to focus on that here. I think we're more interested in the effects they're having on markets. And as we say, the jury is still very much out in this. Comments I have from members are very much the case that existing and EFET members were engaged both on the buy side and the sell side. And the response I'm getting is very much that existing buyers were merely put in touch with counterparties that they already had, that the platform was not particularly bringing new buyers or new sellers to the market. And I think there's a question there of whether the platform represents any more an efficient way for them to do business going forward. But other participants did mention that there were some new buyers in the market. There may have been additional complications in setting up new supply arrangements, particularly where an EFET did not already exist between the buyer and the seller, or where the new buyer did not pass compliance procedures, so were not eligible to join anyway, or changed credit offerings such that they no longer match the expectations of the sellers. So I think there's some initial points to be ironed out there if the platform is to continue to be usable amongst smaller players for purchasing smaller volumes of gas. But I think it's important to recognise that this is additional to vehicles that are already out there. We already have broker platforms and exchanges that are available to participants at many of the most liquid virtual trading points, and I think they will continue to be used. We will see in the near future whether the platform leads to contracts that are actually being struck by buyers and sellers, and what the impact is on prices and how they relate to prices that are already being transacted at via the other platforms. And I think there's some clunkiness of the platform, which I understand Prisma is working on improving, but I don't want to take away from the achievement that Prisma made by delivering something in the first place. So the jury is still very much out on what the platform is delivering and what aspects of the market is having an impact on. I think it remains to be seen whether it has any future, and as James says, that whether it provides any benefits in a market that is returning to normal state rather than emergency is yet to be seen. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you. So the jury is still out and the future is still to be seen. If I need to summarize your statement. Next, the platform was supposed also to allow the participation of industrial customers. So next is Peter Klaes, President of EFIC Europe, providing the perspective of large energy consumers. Peter, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Alberto, and thank you for organizing this this very interesting debate. First of all, I want to underline the continuing impact that this crisis had on consumers. I'm speaking on behalf of industrial consumers, but I'm pretty sure that also residential consumers and smaller companies are really shocked. I would even call it some kind of a trauma that is still there, and this is also proven by the very intense discussions we are still having on market design, specifically for electricity, but also for gas. And I don't know whether the emergency is over, but I do know that markets remain very nervous, and that not much is necessary, or not much is needed to put the market back into flames and really lead to new price spikes or new very volatile prices on the market. I do appreciate, and we do appreciate, what the Commission has done and what authorities throughout Europe have done to reduce the impact of the crisis. There is some people talk about the efficiency improvements or about savings. There is also some demand destruction, and it is not really yet clear what the impact on industry will have been after it all will be over, and what part of gas-intensive industries we might have lost, and also electricity-intensive industries, because, as we all know, the impact of the gas crisis on the electricity market has also been very important. So I agree more or less with James that an emergency measures is for an emergency situation, but two things: I don't know whether this emergency situation is over and how markets will evolve in the next weeks and months, and two, we have to continue on measures and redesigning or reinventing measures that we can take in order to avoid that this happens again, because this would, of course, be a disaster for industry and for households if we cannot control or this situation or avoid similar situations in the future. On the platform, I think a lot has already been said. As practice also shows that it's essentially smaller. Well, small is a relative notion in this context. But let's say that the biggest industrial consumers have their ways of organizing their own sourcing. Some might have participated in the platform, but I do think it's more or less medium-sized, let's say, consumers, gas consumers, that have participated in the platform. I'll repeat, but it's difficult not to repeat when you're the fifth speaker in a row, that matching is, of course, a first step, but not a proof of success. We do need to see how many contracts are coming out of this process. And very interesting also in the reporting that is going to come out of it. Will there be a feedback on how much volume in the end will have to be contracted? Very important to know for me is also the firmness of what has been matched. Let's say, is the contract really the same, at the same conditions at what was proposed to the platform? This is very important for the credibility and the trustworthiness in the platform. And if, of course, in the negotiation process after the matching, there is again discussion on conditions, on the price, on the volumes, etc., this would not be good for the credibility of the system. The time horizon, I did understand that there is a change there. Until now, it was for periods of 12 months. So if I understood right, now the next contracts will automatically be until the end of the gas year 24-25. This is a step forward, of course, because this was one of the issues that we already mentioned in the past. Also, for long-term security of supply, a 12-month period is really not enough to assure buyers and to make sure they have the necessary gas for a sufficient period of time. So if this is the case, that's a step in the right direction. And then last but not least, and this is also a point that was long and largely discussed in the preparation of the platform, the fact that the bids are for baseload products. It's not always obvious for a small or medium-sized company to take care of the balancing and to match, same word here, to match the baseload product they contract with a supplier with their specific needs, which might be much more volatile than a simple baseload need. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for giving the perspective of large energy consumers. I think you raised an important issue that we will see how it has played, the fact that offers to the platforms were not binding, and therefore it has to be seen how reflective they will be of the contract that will be signed. I don't know whether we'll know that because, as it was mentioned, the commercial condition of these contracts would not be disclosed. But clearly, if offers were submitted for a price to the platform and then during the negotiation the terms were substantially changed, then the credibility of the whole process may be sort of questioned. Last but not least, Carola Milligram, head of gas at E-Control. I left her last because clearly the regulator has to take a holistic view, and also I think the regulator protects the interest of consumers, big and small, current and future. So, Carola, what is your take on the experience so far with the platform?
Yes, many thanks, Alberto, also for inviting me today, for inviting E-Control and to provide the view of the regulator. I have to say I was also very skeptical at the beginning when I heard this idea of aggregates, because I also had the same opinion like James. We already have liquid markets, so why do we need this? Cannot this provide the marketplaces, the hubs that we have, the trading structure that we have? But of course, it was an emergency tool for filling our storages again. We have not the same situation that we had last year. Last year it would have been better to have this, of course. This year it's a little bit, we do not need so many volumes again to fulfill the storages. But I think the other aspect is what is also seen, this is of course this, we want to phase out Russian gas. This is a goal of the EU for 27. This is also our national goal in Austria, for example. You know that we are in a specific situation in Austria. We were a central hub for distributing the Russian gas to Italy, to other South European countries. Now we are one of the last member states who receive Russian gas, steady flow still, and with no restricted flow again. So we also see that we have to, of course, we have to diversify, and we are dependent on this, of course, from the transit or from the infrastructure of other member states. What if you think about the added value which could this aggregator platform have is that you have a specific, or you have a certification that you can really buy non-Russian gas at this platform. This is perhaps something that a marketplace, or if you trade OTC or something, then of course you could have a certification like this, but it's much you have much more transaction costs perhaps to get this certification or something like this. This could be an added value also for smaller suppliers, for example, which are also not so active on trading hubs or something like this. This could be an added value on this, but I think this added value has to be proved, of course, in the future. There has to be a proof, of course, that contracts will be concluded, not only matched, but also concluded. But for this, not for emergency case, but for diversification, it could be one further step. That you also have in the background this Memorandum of Understanding between the exporting countries. This could be also some support from the Commission that we didn't have before, so that we really have the commitment from suppliers with non-Russian gas to supply to smaller customers or industrial customers. So this could be something which is interesting, and doesn't mean that this platform should still there in, I don't know, 5 years, but perhaps it's something that we can think about if we develop trading places more in this direction. could be some experience that we gain now with this aggregate platform, how we can improve this and how we can support diversification. And I think also one added value was that before this platform was installed, there were also some regional groups where we were discussing are there barriers that these gas which are then purchased can flow to Eastern Europe, for example. And this is also, of course, for us in Austria a very huge point, because we are dependent, as I said, on the infrastructure. For example, in Germany, we always, somebody say, okay, you can use the German infrastructure, you can also scan supplies, LNG supplies via the German system. And we now see we're a little bit struggling that we have the fees, I have to check the storage neutrality charge, for example, in Germany, which is really a huge point for us, because I think it's a barrier for market integration and also a barrier for using these purchasing platforms, that there's an additional fee on trading in Europe, and also for these markets which have to diversify from Russian gas. It's like we are our Czech Republic or something like this. So there has to be a discussion, also an ongoing discussion on these barriers for market integration and for keeping the gas or getting the gas flowing through Europe. I think this is really a main point. And for all these, the discussion was this aggregated platform was, I think it's something which started the discussion, and this could be an added value of just having this for 1 or 2 years.
Thank you, Carola, also for raising, I think, more, in my understanding, more general issue about the structure of the charging and the structure of the gas European network. So European gas network. So thank you very much. And now we will be running some polls, and then you will have the opportunity to comment on the result of the polls. The polls will be run among the audience, and I turn the screen back to Ilaria for managing the polls.
Thank you, Alberto. Very interesting first round of interventions. Now, just to spice up a bit the debate, and also ask for the opinion of our audience, of our participants, I have prepared some polls. I'm asking kindly Daniela to please put the first one up. So, so there is a recent article appeared on Euractiv, states that in the short term, the added value of the platform seems to lie in the opportunity for smaller companies to gain access to new gas suppliers by relying on the EU's collective market weight. So this is quoted as one of the, say, benefits of the platform. So I'm asking, in addition, what are the other main benefits originating from the EU energy platform in the long term? And you have different options. You can also choose more than one. Speakers and panelists cannot vote, but we'll hear their comments later. So is it more transparency in the gas purchasing operations that the platform brings, or is it more price stability, lower gas prices, more security of supply, solidarity across member states, other benefits, or you're not sure which benefits? It's also a bit to test the waters here. Let's see. Okay, so we have solidarity seems to be fostered by the platform, and there's an equal between lower gas prices and increased security of supply, but also transparency seems to be one of the main benefits we gain via the platform. Gas price stability is was not one of the favorites, let's say. Nobody voted for it. Okay, let's move forward. It's interesting results. Next poll. At present, member states must aggregate demand volumes of gas equivalent to at least 15%, as we already said. 15% of the respective storage filling obligations. So these represent around 13.5 BCM of gas per year, but the total European gas demand is approximately 360 BCM. So do we think that the minimum required aggregation should be increased? Yes, to avoid security of supplies issues? Yes, as long as the refilling obligation for storage remains. No, 15% is sufficient or more than enough. No, it should be even decreased or removed. So let's vote. Okay. Okay, so the majority thinks that actually this obligation, this obligation should be decreased or removed. So 15% is even too much. While there is an equal spreading between those who think that it's good to be increased to avoid security of supply issues, and anyway, as well as as long as the obligation remains. There's only one person actually who thinks that 15% is correct for this. Okay, interesting. I really look forward to the comments of the panel. Let's move forward, please. We have one last poll, which really opens up for more elaboration on the way forward. So the European Energy Platform is intended to be used also for hydrogen joint purchases. So do we think that this should be easier because the hydrogen market is a new market with no pre-existing players? Do we think that it would be unnecessary because it's unlikely that Europe will need as much gas as hydrogen to be purchased externally in the future? Is it something recommendable? So the European Energy Platform is indeed a good model which can be extended, or do we have other views? And here also you have multiple choice. So it means you may think that it's easier, but unnecessary, for example, or so it allows to play a bit with your response. Okay, well, overall, recommendable seems to be the winning keyword here. It looks like it's a good model, the energy platform. Why not using it for other commodities too, such as hydrogen? Say 40% thinks that it would be easier to set it up for hydrogen compared to gas. But also there is, I think, I would say, a good amount of people who think that it's unnecessary for hydrogen. Maybe we won't need such an instrument aggregating demand and offers. Great, thank you very much for taking part in this polls. I hope it was amusing, and let's see what the comments now are. Alberto, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ilaria. Yes, indeed, very interesting results from the polls. I would now go in reverse order to our panelists and speakers to comment what you've seen as a result of the polls. Again, I would like to ask you to stay within maybe a couple of minutes so that we have then time for a final round with some questions for the audience. In the meanwhile, if the audience would like to pose any question, please use the chat. Carola, then you're first.
Yes, I think it was interesting that somebody said that there's more transparency than on how the trading is made. So it's I think it's really the point is that this can improve transparency for smaller companies who would like to buy gas, who is there as aggregator. So it could be something that is more transparent there. If you're a small company, I'm looking for somebody who supplies you with non-Russian gas. It's of course much easier to find it under this aggregate platform. And I think for hydrogen, it's not so clear for me where the added value is, because we have a certification system there for hydrogen. If we really want to aggregate also our demand, if this is needed via this platform, or in the beginning it's also could also made by companies, like we have wholesale companies like we have in the gas market, for example. We have wholesale companies in the gas market which have a large portfolio of different suppliers, and you have a certification system in hydrogen. So you can see if you have green hydrogen, or if you have hydrogen from green hydrogen, perhaps from non-EU member states. So there's, for me, also the question was the added value for this. If there's one, it could be a model, but not really sure if it's needed in the future.
Thank you, Carola. Then next, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. You want my reaction to the first question only, or the three questions that?
Whichever. I mean, whichever. I mean, okay. Whatever you feel reacting to.
Well, the advantage of being a panelist, well, the disadvantage is you cannot vote, but the advantage is you can answer something else than what the options are. So, I would say for the third poll, my answer would be premature. It's not clear how the hydrogen system will evolve and how that market will be organized. I don't know today what can be the impact of a platform on the future hydrogen market. On the first question, I would say you have to make a distinction between an emergency situation, as James also said earlier on. In an emergency situation, I think everything that can help you need to activate, and if it can help to solve an emergency situation, why not? If there is no emergency situation, well, it is still to remain proven that there is a value added to this system compared to a market that is liquid and functioning. So there also, I would like to see after a few auction rounds what the impact of this platform is as a supplement to a normal market system. And as for the second, I do think if there's one thing we have learned from this crisis, that is the importance of finding a good combination in the gas market, in the gas system, between a competitive price and also security of supply. I mean, we have failed somewhere in monitoring correctly the storages, what happened with the storages at the beginning of the crisis, even before the invasion of Ukraine. And I think we have to draw lessons from that. And what is very important is that there is a system set up that measures our ability to guarantee security of supply in gas. And this will probably involve looking at how storages are being filled, how supply chains are diversified, and how we can find alternatives if one or more supply chains are broken. And I think you have to see it in a broader context, whether it's 7% or 15% or 25%. I don't think really that is the key issue. The key issue is that we find ways of monitoring potential threats to our security of supply. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very clear. Doug, what's your take from the poll, from the results of the poll?
Thanks. It's very interesting. I'd be very interested to see the constituency of the people in the audience who voted for this. Our contention at the beginning of this exercise was that the market already delivered many of these things and more. For example, other things that have been mentioned earlier, like how to translate a sharp spike regasification profile into a consumer or tradable profile, but also how to ensure shipping services, how to manage credit. These things are managed automatically by the market, but are a little uncertain here. And perhaps to some people in the market, these things were not obvious how they took place or the importance of them or how they were valued. So I can understand why there was there may have been interest in understanding these things better and having more transparency in the gas purchasing operations as an important answer in question one. We shall see whether gas prices were indeed lower through this. I personally would be surprised, but we hopefully will gain some evidence to support that assertion or not. And similarly, the increased security of supply. I think our contention is that the good markets and cross-border trading and transparency are helpful to security of supply. Solidarity is an interesting one. I'm not quite sure where solidarity delivered here. Second point, it was interesting that the largest individual vote went for no need for or a reduced need for storage filling obligations. And I think, again, one of the information pieces that we possibly need a bit more on there is the impact of the obligations and what they actually did to increase prices and how much the storage obligations actually cost. And Caroline mentioned earlier the amount of money that was spent in Germany to secure storage filling that is now being charged on exit points, not only to industrial customers or local users in Germany, but also cross-border trading. And I think when we realise that the extent of this, then that might cause people to rethink. And finally, well, we always welcome additional platforms to trade. I think, again, if we start seeing new products for hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives, if there is a demand for joint purchasing, if people want to club together, then there are many ways to do this. It doesn't necessarily have to be an organized platform, but we have exchanges, broker screens, we have aggregators in the market. Whether they will be helped by a formal arrangement remains to be seen. I think they will develop in any case. So we'll see that happen.
Thank you, Doug. James.
Yes, thank you, Alberto. And I will go through all three as well, but relatively briefly. I'll very easy on question one. Solidarity came out as the top response, which I think is a good reflection on the success of the European Commission's rhetoric. And as I said in my opening point, this is what the European Commission have been saying. They're saying this is what's going to help solidarity with small companies, solidarity with small landlocked countries. I'm more with Doug on this one. I find it difficult to understand how solidarity is created through aggregate EU. This isn't clear to me. And I think that there are solidarity agreements between member states that are written in law. I don't think aggregate EU should be seen as a solidarity mechanism. Anyhow, for me, I just find it very interesting. The second point, I find the most interesting of that was that 27% for two of the yeses were 27%, even with the caveats associated to them. Again, I would take the view on that we heard from Doug. That's in principle, there is a school of thought that thinks that the 15% target led to the 300 euro megawatt hours we experienced in August. So increasing that seems to be relatively dangerous at the moment. I was also quite surprised there was about 40% that said it should be decreased. I think we've accepted this 15% level. So I ended up being probably there was one other person, the one person that said, just keep it as it is. Steady as she goes. We're still in a crisis. Let's not mess around. Let's not increase, decrease. Let's just keep it playing as it is. And so I'm afraid I'm in the absolute minority with that one person. I think also in Eurogas, we would take a position that the 15% we accepted, but increasing or decreasing it, I think is way too early to talk about that sort of thing. And then finally, I agree with Peter on the hydrogen and the 33% that said it's unnecessary. One, why would DG Competition allow people to club together to jointly purchase things when it's not an emergency? There is no hydrogen emergency. DG Competition have been as difficult as possible in any case to allow aggregates EU to come forward. Are they just going to sit there and go, oh yeah, please, yeah, club together, creates a hydrogen cartel? We've got nothing else to do here in DG Comp. Cannot see it. Impossible. DG Comp will not be excited about the idea of any kind of cartel or platform, whatever you want to call it, for hydrogen. And also, we're just creating the hydrogen market. We're going through the whole process of the gas and hydrogen decarbonisation package. I make this point to Christina as well. Why would we now start considering to have aggregate EU H2? For what purpose? It is completely premature. So I fully agree with Peter on that one, and the 33% that said that this is unnecessary.
Thank you, James. Finally, Falk, do you want to comment on the polls, or you're happy with your platform?
See, I agree with Peter that actually those polls reflect always the current situation. So it might have been different if we would have asked this question 1 year ago. For the increase of the storage filling obligation, it's just interesting that the majority actually said keep it as it is or increase it at least. And also for the hydrogen platform, it's also interesting that the majority is somehow in favor of yes, it's a good idea. So just want to remark that it's quite interesting results.
Thank you very much. Ilaria, do you want to add anything? Because we have probably one question. We have actually 3 questions, but I think 2 of them have already been answered in the chat, in the comments. Do you want to?
No, please go ahead. We can comment.
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 questions, but the first one on whether the demand request will be extended now to March 2025. I think we already had the answer, and it's a yes. The last question is whether other commodities other than gas could be suitable for joint purchasing. And here is mentioned hydrogen and critical minerals. I think we discussed enough on hydrogen. I think the same would apply for other commodities, unless there are an emergency or a crisis there. But I think I found the second question that I found on the chat quite interesting, and this is probably a question for the traders, therefore for Doug. Can anybody explain what interest a shipper would have to act as aggregator or shipper on behalf, consider that it could simply buy the same volumes and resell them at a premium, which could not be done if it were to act as aggregator or shipper on demand? So, Doug, why should you buy on behalf when you can buy and resell at a margin? I think that's the question, isn't it?
Well, exactly. I agree with the sentiment of the question. It's why would, if an intermediary is taking on a degree of risk and a degree of additional administrative work, then normally you would expect that to be reflected within the price they buy at and the price they sell at, and additional services can be provided. To remove that doesn't seem to me to make it interesting for intermediaries to join that market. And whether that's, I think there's probably 2 separate markets going on here. There's what's for virtual LNG, which is really more about producers to aggregators, and then there's separate to that, there's the virtual trading point, which is, to me, is more about aggregators to retail or consumers. And the behaviors are slightly different in those 2 markets and what they're trying to do, and we'll force them together within the platform. But the question would be valid for either market. Why would you take a position and take risk and not charge for that risk?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Anybody else? We have still 1 minute before we start wrapping it up. Is there anybody else wanting to comment? Or Ilaria, do you want to come in with your perspective?
Well, I can say I took some notes as usual, and I think it was, first of all, thank you to everybody. It was really an interesting debate, and thanks for being so open in your comments. So I think that what we can take away from this debate is that, the energy platform, the European energy platform, has been set up successfully. That we had some quite evidences that it delivered what it was supposed to deliver, diversification. So it facilitated the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding with other suppliers, and it was really established as a response for the emergency, as James underlined on a few occasions. It was an instrument to respond to the emergency created by the invasion of Ukraine from Russia and the consequent energy crisis, and as a response to find alternatives to Russian gas supply. As I heard today, this has been let's say, accepted as an instrument, or at least not, it was not fought against, because at the same time, it can be considered as an alternative mechanism which accompanies the development of the market. So as I heard, the bottom line is that we will still need the market. This is probably the case. And I understand that it's also, there's a general favor towards letting the markets develop also in other commodities, so hydrogen, etc. So it's probably premature to start any discussion on what the platform could become in the future, if its scope could be extended. What we have seen so far is good. The mechanism set up by Prisma is working, but I think some question marks we heard today still remain regarding the strong accent of benefits such as transparency, solidarity. I think here the solidarity, when I included it in the options, was because often the platform has been compared to the European actions, in response to COVID-19. So this is what we heard many times, but it's obvious that there are some differences there. Vaccines are not gas stocks, and also the markets, the pre-existing market is certainly different. But I think the purpose was certainly a good one of favoring solidarity and as a European response to the crisis in both cases. So that's the point in common for sure. So I think still a lot remains to be seen. The platform is an instrument for emergency. Are we out of the emergency yet? That's also another question. There are different possible answers. And for the moment, I understand that the stability provided by the platform in its design is something that now the market has accepted and would like to possibly avoid further abrupt changes. I was surprised, but not so much by James's option for 15%. Please keep it as it is now. At this point, it's fine. Let's not change again. Stability is important, as we know, for the market. Okay, I think that's what I take away. But Alberto, please feel free to add if you have any more insights.
No, I think you summarized well. The platform works. Whether it will deliver, the jury is still out. What's its future? I think is too early to say, and for sure it should remain an emergency measure, and therefore its future depends on whether, and hopefully not, we will still be in a crisis in the future. So no, that's it for today. Well, thank you very much. It has been a very rich and interesting debate, and thanks to all of you who have participated. Christina, who had to leave, Falk, and then James, Doug, Peter and Carola. Thank you to the audience who sort of provided a few questions for our speakers and panelists. Well, thanks to Ilaria, who masterminded this debate. And last but not least, thank you to Daniela in the background, without whom we would not be online today. So the next episode of this series would not be in a month, but it will be in 3 weeks' time, on Wednesday, the 28th of June, and it will be about the revision of REMIT, the Regulation of Wholesale Energy Market Integrity and Transparency, and in particular the role of the agency of ACER going forward. So until then, all the best, and but follow us. Every Wednesday, there is one episode of one of our series.